let's now talk about some of the investigable topics in contemporary pragmatics. There are so many areas in which you could work within pragmatics, and also those areas in which you can work within pragmatics as well as by merging it with other disciplines also. For example, in combination with semantics, in combination with phonology, and many other aspects of linguistics. I'll just mention only few of them which may possibly be incorporated within a pragmatic analysis. One important area is about conversational strategies. Every time we are involved in a real life conversation, we employ different conversational strategies, both technical ones and the pragmatic ones, in order to make our communication successful. But the choice of these strategies is not uniform or universal. Every communication topic or situation informs us directly or indirectly about the choice of various strategies. So we do keep on picking various strategies in various situations. For example, there may be a pattern of turn taking in a conversation, and this holds certain socio-cultural meanings. For example, a powerful person in a conversation might take more turns as compared to a less powerful person. Or what kind of turn-taking patterns are being followed in a conversation? That might be an interesting area of investigation for pragmatic reasons. And what are the places where turns are actually shifting? Those transition points where turn from one speaker to another speaker changes may be an important areas of investigation. And what are the possible effects of these changes in turns? Then another possible thing is about interruption. Are there any interruption during a talk between two or more speakers? If there are any interruptions, what are the possible effects of these interruptions? Do they indicate any socio-cultural or power-related meanings? Again, for example, the powerful people involved in a conversation would like to interrupt more as compared to less powerful people. For example, during between a discussion between a boss and a subordinate or employee, it is assumed that it's the boss who would interrupt more as compared to the employee or subordinate. So we could have different pragmatic situations in which these conversational strategies or these conversational aspects might have serious pragmatic meanings. There are other aspects of conversation, for example, insertion sequences, adjacency pairs, pre-sequences, and their patterns in various cultures. They may be investigated seriously in a pragmatic analysis. Moving forward, we can also study a conversation, real-life conversation, based on activity type and the institutional use of language. For example, various activities have a certain pattern of language use. For example, we have different kinds of uses for seminars, interviews, conferences, and similarly different patterns for a street talk. So based on the kind of activity we are in, we can decide about the nature of the language which is involved. We can also talk about the talk type. What kind of talk is undergoing? Is there any telephone conversation or ordering on phone to a restaurant for a certain food order, or is it a kind of a radio contribution through phone? So to what extent these speech events are goal oriented? This is what would decide so many social meanings in a pragmatic analysis. And to what extent do they determine their own structures? Are the structures of a conversation determined by the goals which are in the minds of the speakers, or is it the talk which is deciding the goal of the conversation? There could be so many aspects through which we could look into the pragmatics of a talk. Then focusing on power and distance between speakers is another interesting area of investigation in the contemporary pragmatics. People involved in a conversation are tied with each other with various power relations in a society, and how these power relations and distance are reflected in their talk. For example, in the elements of politeness, we could see that it's the less powerful who would be more polite, and the one who the distance would be more polite as compared to those who have lesser distance between themselves or who are less powerful. So, how speaker gets their own way in performing all these things, and how do they encode power and distance in their conversations? These may be important areas of investigation. Yet another important area is of the face work, how we incorporate politeness in our conversation in order to preserve others' face wants, in order to respect others. What kind of politeness strategies do we employ in our talk, and how they are employed differently in different cultures? That may be an important areas of investigation, and that brings us down to intercultural pragmatics. How various pragmatic elements of a speech are observed in various cultures, and does this difference in various cultures bring in any difference in attitudes or in the meanings of such differences in various kinds of conversations? And how do people accommodate such cross-cultural variations in their conversations? These are some interesting areas of intercultural pragmatics, which are very popular in the contemporary pragmatics also. And then I'll talk about the importance of context. We all know that the context is such a powerful thing in any pragmatic analysis, because we derive meanings from the context in pragmatics and in many other forms of discourse analysis. So either it is the external social structure which determine the way we talk, or our talk is organized, or the kind of choice of words we make, or is it the context which is created within the talk or by the talk itself, which is more important to the meaning? So both the context, the outer context and the internal context of a talk are more important, and they may be investigated in order to know the real meanings of a talk. Then folk views of a talk are also important, and they are based on people's beliefs about pragmatic uses of language, for example, politeness and interruption. Again, in various cultures, they are very important. So people's beliefs are important to investigate the pragmatic meanings of any talk. So therefore, this may become an interesting pragmatic study if we try to mix the way people talk with their beliefs, the way people think. So that would probably bring us down to some kind of interesting study in any pragmatic analysis.